Welcome back to Taiwan Outlook. Our guest today is Dr. Tenji Chen, and he is the professor of economics at National Taiwan University. Dr. Chen, we've been talking about the relationship between Taiwan and China. But as we know that the Asia-Pacific region has become the economic powerhouse of the whole world economy, especially in the West Pacific region. But in the process of regional integration, Taiwan seems to be left out. Do you have concerns about this kind of situation?
Yes, of course, because this regional integration thing is creating some kind of bias, against the natural pattern of international trade. Because two countries get together and they provide sort of preferential treatment to each other, and excluding the other trading partner, which is going to create what we call the trade diversion effect. That is, you distort the natural way of production and trading.
Yeah.
And of course, Taiwan is going to be hurt if somebody do this. So this, of course, a serious problem. But somebody, of course, worry so much that Taiwan will be totally out of the picture, marginalized to the extent that there will be no production or this island will be totally ignored. That probably won't happen. What will be more likely to happen is that if the whole East Asia is having some kind of FTA with each other, including the United States and maybe Europe, and then Taiwan is just out. What is more likely to happen is Taiwan's industry is going to be kind of skewed toward the area that which you don't have tariff. For example, in the IT industry area, the custom tariff is almost zero for everything. So there's no barrier, even if Taiwan is not a member of this regional trade agreement, we won't have any difficulty producing IT and selling out of Taiwan. So what will happen then, you're going to see more and more resources will be put into that area. And of course, it creates some kind of distortion that this industry economic resources will probably be too much concentrated, too concentrated in certain area. And of course, there are services, particularly domestic-oriented services, which is not tradable, and therefore that you can still operate. So we still will have industry, but this industry will probably be kind of distorted. That's one thing. The second worry, which I think is a more eminent problem for us, is because you are marginalized, that you become so inconvenient. It becomes so inconvenient to do business in Taiwan, so therefore, let's not go to there. Let's go do business somewhere else, because there's plenty of countries in the world. So that way, I think we kind of face more danger in that area.
But what is becoming real is the so-called ASEAN plus China, 10 plus 1 or even plus 3 in the future. So if that happens, Taiwan will be out of picture, right? Because Taiwan is not in this bigger integration model. How do you see that?
The actual sort of study, the detailed study on the prospect of ASEAN plus 1 or ASEAN plus 3 usually indicate that ASEAN plus 1 is probably okay for us because it's only China and ASEAN getting together. And of course, they create a lot of trade between themselves, but because of the level of production, is very different from ours. And Taiwan also invests a lot in China. We also invest a lot in ASEAN. So we probably won't be hurt that much by ASEAN plus 1. But ASEAN plus 3 will be more dangerous. It's more destructive in a sense because Korea and Japan they are more at the same level, particularly Korea. Actually, I think the Korea-US one is also a kind of detrimental arrangement for us. So the ASEAN plus 3 is going to be pretty damaging. So this we certainly have to to find a way out, and hopefully that WTO is going to do something on this, or hopefully the multilateral negotiation could move forward quickly, therefore does FTA become irrelevant. That would be the best solution. Otherwise, we have to find some other regional solution.
The United States proposed the idea of so-called FTA-AP. Do you think that's a possible replacement or supplement to the so-called ASEAN Plus 1 and 3?
Yeah, certainly that the people who are supporting FTA, people who consider FTA to be something good, have the argument like this, that if everybody has a FTA, if most countries in the world have organized some kind of FTA and they are kind of overlapping with each other, then in the end, everybody would be happy to have a worldwide FTA. So you come to the utopian sort of free trade world. That's the argument that's supporting the FTA arrangement. So if we apply the same argument within Asia Pacific, then you are saying that, well, you guys go ahead and do this FTA one with the other. But in the end, we can get together and have a APEC FTA. That certainly is going to have more welfare gains compared to the individual and smaller one. So if we can come together with FTA AP, which is certainly superior to any individual combination of the FTA. The problem, of course, is the political reality. There are always some people there who are skeptical about this. Of course, logically, there's no reason for them to reject the idea. This is, if you think a bilateral FTA is a good one, then a bigger one is always better. As economic theory will tell you. So there's from the economic perspective, there's no reason for any country to reject this idea. But they always use the political thing and to say, well, you got to do something else. The time is not ripe yet, and things like that. So for us, I think, of course, that this is something certainly superior, theoretically. It is also good, I think, for Asia Pacific itself, because you see the problem in this region. You cannot imagine in the future that Asia is going to become another Europe. You become a common market and everybody is integrated into a single market, which probably won't happen. It probably will not get into American type of FTA either, like in NAFTA or even the FTA of America, because you have really two big power here competing with each other. So economic theory again will tell you when you have two leaders, you could get into some kind of trouble in equilibrium. So have a bigger region encompassing United States, Canada, and some Pacific American countries. I guess is something very good. Also, Russia is in.
That's right.
So
in that package.
Right. So this is certainly, I guess, a very, very good idea for us to pursue. It may take a long time, but doesn't matter. As long as everybody agrees, this is actually we had a Bogor declaration. We already said we're going to do this by the year 2020, right? The only problem is we don't really have a formula, right? We don't have a formula to make that happen, and we don't have a real commitment. Although that there's some commitment made in the, I believe in the Osaka action plan or something that there. But I think the key here is we need a formula. We need a formula to say that how this is going to happen. And we don't have to set a deadline for that. Although if we have a deadline, it'd be fine, but just kind of worried that people may not feel comfortable having a deadline. But even without a deadline, if we have formula, I guess this is eventually going to happen. For example, let me propose the following. If these 23 countries, 22 or 23? 23, they come together and say, we're going to have a free trade area by year sometime, but this is going to be voluntary.
Just like APEC.
Right, like APEC. It's a voluntary participation process, right? Okay? So if you participate, then you have to extend this to everybody. Okay, just like the commitment you made in WTO. And then if you do this voluntarily, if we have more than 50% of the population, or 50% of the GDP, or 50% of the number of countries, then this will become effective.
That's right.
Then I guess we can do that one day, because what you see is you're going to have, you know, for example, you got ASEAN plus 1, ASEAN plus 3, and maybe U.S. Canada, and maybe U.S. somebody else, and maybe, so everybody's doing this, right?
Yeah.
So you're increasing coverage, right? And when this coverage get to the 50% level, then we all say everybody's in. That makes a lot of sense, right?
That's right.
When you have 50% of the trade, which is already under free trade, then why do you have to worry about the other minority of the trade, and you want to regulate that with all this tariff? That doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
So once we have a formula, I guess this could happen, and you still allow sort of free association, right? In between that happens, then any 2 countries or 3 countries or more countries, they can always get together and do something and make this kind of overlapping.
But it may be true that in the end, if everybody sign FTAs, everybody will be better off. But the thing is, in the process or in the transition, some people may lose more than the others. For instance, South Korea just finished its FTA with the U.S. And some people in Taiwan are worried about this kind of competition from South Korea because the big market that South Korea is now able to get access to now. Do you think that in the process, because the political concerns by other countries, Taiwan may be being left out in the process of coming to the end of the FTA for everybody?
Yeah, of course that we could not find a solution. Obviously the problem is political, right? It's a political problem, so the solution has to be political. But if we cannot find a political solution, there are some economic way out, maybe partially could offset the impact of this. For one thing, that today's FTA is not much focused on the manufacturing goods because the tariff, is already pretty low, right? Like for example, in the U.S. case, the high tariffs area are textile industries, automobiles 2.5%, I think, TV 5%, and most the product are under 3% tariff, right? So if Korea enjoy 3% tariff advantage when they compete with us on the U.S. market, then our government can always do something to offset that, I guess. Hopefully that this will be compatible with the WTO rule, but even if it is not completely compatible, I believe we can argue because we are hurt. So we got to defend ourselves, right? So if for 3% difference, I guess the government can easily find something to help our industry to offset their disadvantage in competition. For the higher level, I guess is a more difficult one. But on the other hand, if you're looking at those industries like textile, do you really want to get that much into it, right? Of course, there will be impact, because suddenly the Korean textile is going to swap the U.S. textile market, and this is still a very important export market for us. It could be very, very, very hurting. So we will suffer. But I guess there's some way, something the government can do to kind of diminish the damage a little bit. But more importantly, I guess, we have to be more assertive and more aggressive in terms of negotiating something on a service area. Because this is really a core of today's FTA agreement. And Taiwan has already 73% of the GDP in the service area. So we can do something on this. And to do this, you really don't need a FTA because for the service, under the current WTO, regulation, that there are a lot of agreement you can do without the service, and that will help, I guess, sort of minimize the damage.
Yeah, Professor Chen, thank you very much for giving us very insightful comments on Taiwan's current economic situation and its future prospects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching Taiwan Outlook, and see you next week.